Where'd I put the remote for that? Yeah. Boom. With this new setup, the one thing I don't know how to do is to get the link to share, which is annoying. Let me see if I can figure that out. But if you can see the show, say hello, happy new year, good to see you, of course. Let me turn this around this way a little bit. And good to see you. I'm just back from overseas, so I haven't really prepared any topics for a show today. I can talk about any topic that you like. Of course, we'll see how that goes. Let me test out and see if I can see my own comment. Oh, no, that's odd, because I put in Happy New Year as the topic. So I'm going into the new streaming settings here, and you know what else? I can't even make out the names in the chat there. So this is connecting through something different. So I think I need to update the streaming settings. Let me go here. Wow, I can't even make that out. Phoenix and Diggins Konto. I can barely make that out. So yes. Okay. So this is not working very well. I think I might have to. So this is the problem, is that it's going through the streaming settings are not working the same as the settings in the default YouTube streaming settings. I should play around with this and get this right at a different time. So, okay, well, indeed, yes, this is the perfect way to start again. I think, give me 5 minutes. I'm going to start the stream again. Let me set it up properly. I'm going to go to the old setup. I'm trying to use the new setup in YouTube, and it's obviously not working very well. So give me 2 minutes. I'll be right back. In fact, I'll pause this and I'll restart it in a moment. Or you can just stay with me. Let's do it that way. Let's, given that it's already working deep on the classic YouTube Studio view, let's just go into that. I can update the name of the video. There's no need to restart this. Indeed, yes, a great way to start a new year of streaming, live streaming. Boom. So let's, indeed, streaming right now. There are the contents. There are the comments now working. Happy 2020. Dong. Let's save that. Let's pop this out. Boom. So let's top chat, live chat, pop out chat here. Let's put this back, so I apologize for the technical issues, but bear with me. Aquint, I seem to be in the wrong setup. I'll tweet the correct. I'll tweet the correct link. Boom. The other thing that I'll do is I'll go into advanced settings and I'll get the link. Oh. Let me come on, advanced settings. Okay, let's just go there. Boom. You're on watch page. Okay, here. Boom. There is the correct link. Hey, check out too. Good to see you. BTC Chiba. Boom. Good to see you. As usual. Not doing things exactly right. Boom. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, I think we're pretty much as good as we can be. Oh, maybe not. Happy 2020. Let's close that down. Let's keep that open. Let's close that down. Let's keep that open, which is a different version of that. Let's go back to the basic info. Let's shut down that to save some bandwidth. And okay, I'm now here. Good to see you all. So yes, I got back from Australia yesterday, so I can talk about Australia. I've been following a little bit about the news from Gone and so on, but to tell you the truth, I have not really been... No, Mr. Cordy Chip, that's not what I was doing, although believe me, if I did, it would take more time. Live chat. Boom. Hello 2020. An inauspicious beginning to the year. So yes, I got back yesterday. I've been unpacking today. I haven't picked out stories for tonight. I can talk. I've been reading today a little bit about Gon as I've been catching up on Japan news and whatnot. But yes, and Kirk from JamaiParis.com. Good to see you. Long time no see. Good to also see BTC Chiba, against Konto, Phoenix 787, Odie Jr., Tech Out 2, Mr. Cordy Chap, Quentin Ranked, and everyone else who's watching. Please remember to come by and say hello. I'm not going to stay on that long. Like I said, I don't have any prepared topics. I can talk about whatever you would like to do, but yes, Mr. Cordy Chap is lucky that I missed the hottest day on Saturday. Well, there was one day during the week where central Melbourne was 43, and where I was out in the suburbs in Box Hill, it was 45 degrees, and it was crazy. It's the next day it was actually like 22 degrees. The wind just changed direction, it becomes like 22 degrees. But the day that it was like being like when you open up a hot oven, pretty much. The wind was just crazy one day. So we had some pretty hot days. I mean, I think 45 is as hot as I've experienced in my whole life. We also had a couple of days there with smoke. Melbourne itself, apparently there was a nearby small brush fire at one point, but for most, hey Mr. Cordy Chap, here is that South Australia, or are you in South Australia or Sydney? I forget, I know you're in Australia. 48.3 is impressive no matter where you are. That's pretty crazy. But yeah, so we had smoke, bad smoke, like hazy smoke, like 2 days, and then we actually had some clothes hanging out to dry, and it all got a bit smoky. So we were lucky. That's as bad as it gets. But yeah, no, Sydney, that sucks. I mean, again, I can't imagine. Sydney's just a huge city. Australia's always had crappy summers, and it always has had a lot of bushfires, but yeah, it's on a different level this year. I will talk about going in that case, Quentin Rankins, certainly, and indeed with the Middle East as well. That's something, if you've been following me on Twitter, I've not been able to resist making comments about today, so I can talk about those things. But yeah, no, that said, it was my first time in Melbourne, really in Victoria, since like the early 1990s, so about 25 years, I guess. I think I was about 15 or 16 years old last time I was there. I got to see all my cousins for the first time in ages, which was awesome. My mum was down there as well, so that's where she's from. My sister and my mum are from Sorrento, which is a small town on the Mornington Peninsula. And I lived there basically from being a baby until I was like 5 or 6 years, about 5 years old. And then I lived in Point Lonsdale a few years later, also a small town there, but yeah, my cousins all moved from that area up until, well, they all lived in Melbourne. So yeah, it was really, really great to see there. Happy New Year to everybody, of course, and wishing everybody a great 2020, and hope that you had a wonderful 2019. I was hoping I'd be more prepared and I could actually look back at the news from 2019. But as it is, oh, you know what, I should probably just do the settings here so this doesn't cut out. So let me do that right now. Let me boom. Oh, that's right. That was dumb. Oh well. Technical issues to start the year. I think I'll just leave it there. Anyway, it was good. It was good to be in Australia. Yes, Odie Jr. So Gone. Yeah, it was a surprise that he got away, and they're still trying to figure out how he got away. And it seems that, just to recap for the whole story, so of course Brazilian-born, Lebanese parentage, with French citizenship. Became when Nissan got into a whole bunch of trouble in the 1990s, I believe, or the early 2000s. Renault, the French, partly government-owned car company, went and bailed out Nissan with a bunch of money. At that time, they were doing very well, and Nissan was not doing very well. So, they came in, and as part of the bailout, they got an ownership, including the right to appoint directors, and they appointed Carlos Ghosn, who was a high flyer, up-and-comer within Renault, to go and turn around Nissan, as he indeed did with other Renault investments, which included Mitsubishi Motors and I believe some US car companies as well. That they actually owned a US tire company, I think. And that was how he originally came up. In fact, that's right. Now I recall, he came up through Michelin originally. So he became someone with a reputation for being good at turning around car-related companies in financial trouble. And sure enough, it seemed to be true with Nissan. And the thing about Nissan was, Renault acquired Nissan when it was really, really in a bad situation. Even though Nissan, is a much, much bigger car company than Renault, so they kind of took advantage of the fact that Renault was on a good place, Nissan was in a low place. At normal times, Nissan is a car company, many times larger than Renault, but they were just able, they were in a good place at that time to be able to bail them out. And Carlos Ghosn came in, and I think it's not too small a thing to say that he is greatly responsible. There's still a lot of discussion about this in Japan. And indeed, some measure of resentment at the idea that it's Ghosn's credit that Nissan turned itself around. But, he came in, and it wasn't just pep talks. It was, he actually, shook up the supply chain of Nissan in a way which was incredibly disruptive in Japan at the time. He actually broke off all of the family parent, the supply chain relationships that Nissan had. It turned around, did a lot of things to cut spending in ways that actually inspired reforms in other companies like Sony and other companies in Japan. So, Ghosn was sort of, it's fair to say, he was kind of a celebrity boss, the way he turned around the car company. Nissan did start to do very well. And again, it wasn't just the supply chain modifications. You look at the cars from Nissan. He revived the Fairlady brand, the GTR. A lot of cars that actually, I think of as being the best cars that Nissan has. And, they definitely got their mojo back under him. So look, he did a good job, but there was this other thing about Ghosn, which is that he also, he enjoyed being boss. He enjoyed being one of the youngest CEOs and one of the fastest risers within Michelin and then Renault in history. And he was quite happy to allow his success at Nissan to feed into the idea that he was the best boss in the world. He wanted to tell that story. In fact, he liked to play up his own publicity about that, and that fed also into the idea that he wanted to have the kind of lifestyle of a world-class CEO, which is something that most Japanese companies, it's kind of funny. It's something that surprised me when I came to Japan and I became involved in mergers and acquisitions. When you get to see the inside of a lot of Japanese companies, and you learn that a lot of Japanese companies are not, they don't get paid even the C-suite, the CEO, the CFO, the CTOs, the C-suite, the execs of major global, publicly listed corporations. I got to see some of their books, and they get paid. I was a junior associate, and I was on comparable salaries to to these people. They were getting, and what I mean by that is, the best paid people at Toyota were making less than 200,000. They were making, well, in fact, Toyota, I don't know Toyota for a specific example. That's a guess. But, for a lot of publicly listed companies where they list the salaries, they're really making kind of what in US companies, people, junior staff sort of make. So, when they had the Olympus scandal, don't forget that the papers, what they circled on was not the embezzlement and the misappropriation of funds and ruining the company. It was the fact that the CEO was paying himself $1 million was the thing that people sort of rounded on first. And the idea that this was socially unjust. And Look, Gon expected to be paid like a global CEO. He was a global CEO who was, sent to Japan by the French parent to, revive Nissan, and he did that. So it seems now, it's come out through investigations in France and Japan that, it seems highly likely now that he actually was involved in enriching himself more than he was entitled to. However, when he was acting CEO of Nissan, the things that that started to generate resentment from within the board. Hey, Penny Omori, good to see you. No notifications from YouTube. I'm sorry to hear that. Well, good to see you, Penny, and I'm glad that you made it. So coming back, there were people basically. No question that the Japanese leadership in the Senate had been looking for an opportunity to take back control of their own company for a long time, and to come out from being under French control, and frankly from being out from under the self-aggrandizing, someone. Of course, he actually did do things to turn around Nissan, but there was resentment both at the fact that Gon was an outsider who had come in and disrupted a lot of important sort of aspects of things that Nissan people didn't want to disrupt in terms of their relationships with their employees, with their suppliers, as well as the fact that he was a showboat. They didn't like that either, and they were looking for an opportunity to get him out. And clearly there were some people who were trying to build up some kind of a dossier on him, and they got their hand got forced when they found out that that Renault was planning to consolidate its control by fully integrating Mitsubishi Motors, Nissan Motors, and Renault into a single company, which would have all been under Carlos Ghosn's control. They sort of realized that they were out of time, so they took what they had, which was that they were aware that he, they found that he had approved some of his own salary increases. These were all increases, by the way, which were approved by the board, or at least through the approval mechanisms within the company, and reviewed by the legal officer of the company. So it wasn't exactly, taking the hand in the till. But it was basically they accused him of unjust and overpaying himself, including setting up mechanisms with his expat package to give himself additional salary beyond what was approved. And for this, through methods which are pretty much established. I believe, I remember when the story first came out, it's pretty normal for Japanese companies, CEOs, do this to pay themselves extra sort of all the time, so that on the books it looks like they're paying themselves a humble, modest sort of CEO salary, Japanese style CEO salary, and they pay themselves, basically, they set up funds, for example, which will only mature, for example, the postponed salary. I just remember this is a big one for the idea that when he leaves Nissan, he'll get a huge payout, at that time, and that's put into his contract. But, the question as to whether you treat that as salary or not, but this is exactly how most company presidents, it's how you get them out to replace them. And this is kind of a normal thing in Japan, so it seemed pretty tenuous to accuse this of being, constructively additional income that was not being properly declared. But this is all that they had on him, so they took it to the police, and the police, decided. It's not clear exactly how the decision was made, or the prosecutors made the decision to take this and to actually turn it into a detention, but they decided when Gon was returning from a business visit from overseas to come back into Japan, that they actually caught him at the airport, and they decided to take him into custody, accused of these sort of corporate, sort of white-collar crimes, which had never been actually applied before. I believe that this was the first time that, although these were technically criminal offences that were being charged with, they were considered to be relatively commonplace within Japanese companies, and no one had ever been prosecuted for them before, but they decided to put him into detention, into cuffs. Which was a pretty big step, and he stayed there, and basically from there we got a bit of a lesson in the Japanese criminal justice system, and how it really doesn't work. And then there's a few issues which have been associated with the detention. It's gone on for more than a year now. First of all, the fact as to whether a case even existed for this was unclear, and yet basically the police were pulling all the levers that they have. They were detaining him for questioning, and then coming up with a new charge whenever the period would run out for questioning, where they'd have to release him. where they wanted to get a confession or get enough time that they could dig up more evidence on him, and he was not providing the confession that they wanted. So instead of releasing him in the questioning period, normally get 72 hours in the West, they would just add another charge on, or they would ask for an extension from the Tokyo District Court, which they got. And they kept pushing and stretching out the detainment, basically to try to put more pressure on him to confess. They were leaking information to the media. The media and the judges were cooperating with the prosecutors. The detention sort of ended up getting extended for a long time before he was finally charged, and the fact that it took them so long to charge it reflected that the prosecutors were not confident that they had a case. But again, they seemed to decide, it seems with the cooperation of the people at Nissan that were taking over, hey, Sergeant Bilko, good to see you, that they wanted to make sure that they had that they wanted to do the best to see that they could try to get something on him, and that while it did seem that they didn't have very much on him at the time that they charged him, there have been subsequent investigations in France and elsewhere which have found it highly likely, for example, the fact that he was able to rent the Versailles Palace and the way that he paid for that for his daughter's wedding. A bunch of other things have come up that have kind of hinted at the fact that he probably was finding various ways to enrich himself that were outside what was probably approved by the corporate lawyer, and not just in Nissan, but of also other Renault companies. So they've after they stood up for him for a long time, they've kind of distanced themselves from him a little bit. However, Gon maintained the whole time that he was innocent. He was going to fight the charges, and given that these were new charges, his defense team also felt that these were contestable charges, which is rare. Remember, Japan, 99.9% conviction rate. However, come forward to late last year, he was detained, I believe, in late 2018. It's been well over 12 months now that he's been in detention, and during this time, first of all, he expected to be released on bail right away, but he was not granted bail. He was eventually granted bail. It took a very, very long time, and when he was released, it was on condition that he was banned from contact with his family, out of fear that he might try to align stories or manipulate evidence with his wife, who was accused of being an intermediary. She did own a boat that was allegedly one of the mechanisms that he used for enriching himself inappropriately with Nissan money. So there was that, but at the same time, the idea that he was on home detention, but he was still prohibited from contact with his family, and the fact that the prosecutors were continuing to try to delay the case, to draw out the detention, the pre-trial detention, again beyond 12 months without contact to his family. No question, this was causing a lot of issues, and so Gon wanted to go to trial as soon as possible. And in December, the story that we now understand is that there was a motion made towards the Tokyo District Court to commence the trial, and prosecutors sought to indefinitely postpone the start of the trial to allow them more time to gather evidence to prepare. As the excuse, but ostensibly just to put more psychological pressure on Gon, and the courts agreed to an indefinite extension, i.e. that he would continue to be detained, he would continue to not have access to his family, and there was no fixed date for a trial. And apparently, according to his defense lawyers, this is kind of what put him over the edge a little bit, was the realization that he was not aware. He considered himself innocent, and he hadn't yet been given access to a trial, and that he was facing an indefinite period of being prohibited access to his family. And this was a tactic being used by the prosecutors to pressure him. So it seems that, highly likely that after that pre-trial motion, which basically extended the court date even further, and the question from Quinn Rankett, is there a right to a speedy trial in Japan? It's typical that they do take a long time. I don't know that there is a right to a speedy trial. I guess there must be something somewhere. But certainly, the timeline for this happening, I know of cases of people being criminally prosecuted and they were in detention for up to a year. More than a year is really unusual. And again, the whole circumstance of this case, because it was so high profile, were kind of unusual as well. But yeah, apparently he made the decision, it would seem, that screw this, he's been cooperative. He decided he was going to leave Japan. So although he had Lebanese French and Brazilian passport, all of which were being held in possession of the court. He was permitted a duplicate French passport, which apparently you can use for renewal purposes and certain paperwork purposes. And apparently this French passport, the second French passport that he had, was kept under. It was kept in a clear case, locked, with the key being owned by the lawyers on his defense team. However, this was only verified once, and it was more than 12 months ago. The stories about how Gon fled the country, it now seems there seem to be conflicting stories. The original story was that there was a musical recital in his apartment, and he left and hidden, secreted into a shallow case. And Bill, it's boy, good to see you. Happy New Year. And that he was smuggled onto an airplane and out of the country. It now seems that's actually not the case. Apparently there was a camera on his apartment, but the camera was only checked once a month. It wasn't monitored constantly. And when they looked at the video, it seems that he, after the concert, actually walked out of the apartment by himself into the night and didn't come back. So he walked out the front door. He didn't have an ankle bracelet. He wasn't being GPS monitored. Japan typically doesn't have this kind of bail sort of tracking sort of system. This was the whole arrangement of his bail was kind of unusual. $14 million bail, by the way, the highest bail ever paid in Japanese history, which has now been forfeited, of course. But it seems that now the story is that it appears a couple of U.S. mercenaries, American, at least one of them was American, arranged for his extraction, and yes, this was done by basically putting him into a musical equipment case with air holes that was too big to go into an X-ray machine. It was he went to Kansai airport and was put onto a private jet to Turkey, and from Turkey transferred to a smaller jet to Lebanon. So very exciting and everything, but the end result, of course, is that he got to Lebanon and he said he wasn't escaping justice. He was escaping the injustice of the Japanese criminal legal system that was denying him his human rights of access to his family, which is kind of what his defense team is saying as well. So what do I think about all of this? I have endless sympathy for the fact that the way that the whole trial worked and the justice system was treating his case. If there'd ever been a single Japanese person who had done the same thing that they arrested him for that was treated in the same way, I would have less sympathy for Gon. But as I understand, the mechanisms that he was using, for example, the delayed salary and so on, being pretty run of the mill. I mean, if they were to go and investigate everybody in Japan who's ever taken a post-retirement salary boost from their company as a company president, there'd be a lot of people in jail, and they wouldn't get away with treating the leads of the Keidanren the same way as they treated this guy. So it does appear that the treatment was biased and unusual, and it appears that the courts were cooperative with the prosecution in trying to deliberately increase the pressure to extract a confession and settlement from Gon, to basically help them save face, to make so that they wouldn't run the risk of losing the trial. And this included the indefinite extension and of the court date, and the denial of access to the family. So up until this point, I mean, apart from the fact that it does appear that subsequent investigations that they didn't have at the time that they arrested him, but and not just in Japan, and other countries have turned up. It seems there was inappropriate stuff going on by Gon, and it seems highly likely he was involved in financial misdeeds, which is basically, probably him enriching himself the way that he felt he deserved to be enriched, but, still illegally and inappropriately in multiple companies, not just in Nissan now, it seems, also Mitsubishi and Renault, and that he does have a case to answer. And look, he is in Japan. He was being held under Japanese laws. I think what sympathy I had for him did go when he fled. I mean, look, he's escaped to Lebanon. Clearly, the manner in which he skipped bail, left the country and entered Lebanon that's clearly illegal. Even if the charges against him were trumped up, there's now an Interpol warrant on him, so it's hard to think that he'll be able to get away with traveling anywhere. There'll be charges pressed against him, probably in France. if he went there. The irony is that while it looks like apparently he's on stamps in Lebanon, he's quite well known over there, and he has strong political connections, and everyone immediately assumed, oh, the Lebanese government must be corrupt and let him in. But at the same time, apparently a group of lawyers who are aware that when he was CEO of Renault and Nissan, he paid a visit in 2008 to Israel, where he met the Israeli president and a bunch of other people, basically business-related stuff. And because Lebanon has the Arab League boycott against Israel, this is taken as a violation of the boycott on Israel, and it looks like he could face prosecution in Lebanon for dealings with Israel, which personally it's a whole separate can of worms. But of course that's total bullshit that you should go to jail for having associations with Israel. But again, just in the same way that perhaps he was unlucky to be arrested in Japan and subject to that justice system, well, the place he chose to run to was a place that would put him into jail simply for visiting, simply for visiting Israel. And yes, he's chosen to go back there at a time when the Middle East is getting a little bit crazy. Tikyo Sam, you came to the right place. Barry Convex, good to see you. France won't extradite its own citizens. So Barry Convex, I'm not saying that he'd be, really, one that seems strange, that France won't extradite its own citizens, even on Interpol warrants, even on crimes that France recognizes. They wouldn't extradite murderers. Like within Europe, France wouldn't extradite a French murderer to Germany if they killed someone in Germany. That would seem ridiculous to me. I don't believe that that's true. And even if it is true, fact is, it now seems likely that he also committed crimes in France, and that he would be in trouble for that as well. Mr. Kordychev, the Jordanians are the only sane ones there. Believe me, I'm sure there are lots of sane Lebanese and sane Syrians and sane Egyptians. And sane Jordanians as well, but yes, every country obviously has stuff going on there. But yeah, it looks like he doesn't have much of a safe place to go. There were stories that came out in the French press immediately that he had already signed a deal with Netflix to get a movie made, which started having people speculating that perhaps Rowan Atkinson was going to get the role of playing him in the movie. All happened a little bit fast for me. That's now been denied apparently by Gon. Also, Gon has denied that he escaped inside a cello case from the recital, and he's denied that his family was involved in the planning. Yes, I personally, my money would be on Joe Pesci. I think he would be kind of. I don't know if he could do a very good French accent, but I would like to see that if they were going to make a movie about this. It is sort of movie material, no question. But that said, I would also be reluctant for a person. He reminds me of Sepp Blatter. He's someone who's so determined to be the hero of his own story, when clearly he's not. He's been mistreated, I think, in Japan. I think that's a fair thing to say. But he's not clean. I'd be very surprised if he was actually, Sepp Blatter made the final thing he did, I think, before he went to jail was he spent a whole bunch of FIFA money on a movie talking about how how he was like a hero for creating FIFA and so on, which no one watched. But Danny DeVito, that would be a pretty good one. So that's a thing that's happened. Who would be the hero of a movie about him? You know what? I mean, given the white savior complex of American movies, well, there'd be two ways to do it. You could do it the same way as that movie about that horrible Florida kidnapping with Mark Wahlberg, about the kidnapping and robbery in Florida, where the kind of heroes are kind of the bad guys, and kind of have everyone as being sort of bad guys in it, and you could kind of, I don't know, the mercenaries might be an interesting point of view to tell the story. It turns out that apparently, by the way, the private air company, the staff that helped get him through customs without his passport being checked, now claim that their families were being threatened. Again, maybe this was the mercenaries that were doing this, in order to get them to cooperate with moving Gone through. So 7 people have been arrested associated with this in Turkey, and probably some people are going to be arrested in Japan as well. But I can't help but notice TQ Sam is saying stuff. So, oh, this is your pickup artist friend guy. I saw that you were posting on Facebook about meeting him, and I remember the fuss about this guy years ago. So he was making pickup artist videos, and he made some in Korea. He got extradited to South Korea for filming. He got extradited. Where did he get picked up? In Japan? Did he get extradited to South Korea from Japan to that? But by Interpol in Denmark on his way to Thailand. Well, there you go. So don't piss off South Korea either, I guess. I guess Gordon's done a lot of things, but that's probably one thing he didn't do, was making on the street pickup videos. So there you go. But yes, one wonders who made contact with the mercenaries. Indeed, Quinn. And it seems to me that would be his wife, wouldn't it? I mean, unless he has or his lawyers. And also the question about, what happened, how did he get his passport back? Because apparently the word is that he entered Lebanon, legally with a French passport. So he obviously got his hands on that second passport that his lawyers were meant to keep locked up. So it seems to me like the lawyers are also highly likely to be in contempt of court, and if that's the case, they should probably be disbarred. Actually, I mean, again, I'm sympathetic to their case, but if they actually aided and abetted somebody leaving the country to escape a criminal charge, well, that's going a little bit beyond the normal defense lawyer stuff. That's unethical. And they were under an obligation to the court to maintain, to protect the wallets. So yeah, there was an interesting blog by one of the defense lawyers today who talked about how this was a direct result of the injustice that Gon was facing. So that was interesting, but yeah. Am I sure the prosecutors didn't do the whole thing? Maybe the prosecutors did it because they realized they didn't have a case. Who knows? But yeah. Well, Tico Sam, maybe given that they're going to probably detain him before trial for 4 years, maybe that counts. Who knows? It does need to be a crime in the country where they're being picked up normally for them to act. But we'll see. I'm curious, but I'm not going to ask here how you have friends in the FBI. And I'm... Although that sounds like a fascinating side story as well, which comes to the second part of this. So on the flight back on the flight back from Australia, I was watching the Jack Ryan series on Amazon Video, which it was alright. It was better than I was expecting, but I wasn't expecting it to be very good, and it still wasn't very good. Hey, Tawaiwai, good to see you. Happy New Year. So I was watching the story of the guy from The Office, kind of dramatically tracking down the terrorist Suleiman, and it turns out that I don't know where they got the name for the bad guy character for that from, but by coincidence, by some spellings of the head of the Iranian Quds Brigade, the overseas kind of quasi-mercenary, arm, the special forces arm of the Iranian Republican Guard. Who was assassinated, extrajudicial murdered in Baghdad airport a couple of days ago. His name is Soleimani, but apparently some spellings I've seen covering this, some say O, some say U, some say OU for the Solomon part. It's the same name as the bad guy from the Amazon thing, so it could be that everybody watched the Jack Ryan, too much Tom Clancy, and they all became convinced that this was like the worst guy in the world. Now certainly, it seems like he's done a lot of clandestine military, overseas stuff for the Iranian government. But, again, if clandestine overseas military bad stuff for a government makes you a legitimate assassination target, then, I don't know, like certainly, just days after they had those pretty nasty protests at the American embassy in Iraq, it seemed to me like a pretty heavy-handed response. I mean, sure, don't screw with America, very good. Where is it? Over here, yes, rocket scientist t-shirt from the Space Museum. But apparently, this was the story that I've heard about this is that, where the State Department was presenting options to President Trump to respond to these protests, which it seems were being organized by the pro-Iranian militias that were in inside Iraq, and basically that are looking to trying to displace American influence in Iraq so that Iran can extend its influence, which is already pretty substantial in Iraq right now. And that they prompted the riots and the sort of violence against the U.S. Embassy there. And apparently the yes minister joke is that you always present 4 options to your minister. You present 3 options which are basically the same, and one option which is so radically, out of the way crazy that you know that he's not going to pick it, like, invading Warsaw or something like that. And apparently that's the story, that this was presented as the extreme outlier option to what everyone was recommending, and he chose this. And so why did Trump decide to assassinate like a high-ranking Iranian government official? Well, does it have anything to do with the impeachment hearings starting in the Senate on Monday? I mean, bombing, and the thing is as well, I mean, it kind of works in lots of ways. The bombing, they actually, there was a missile attack in Iraq where they killed this Iranian high-ranking official. So even if they got the countries mixed up, which I suspect that they do all the time, they're still going to get there's a 50% chance that they're going to get part of it right, because, they were combining both. But in the end of the day, this is when Clinton, was going to go to impeachment for, basically coming on the dress of an intern. He bombed Iraq then as well. There was at that time, it was cruise missile attacks, I believe, to sites over Iraq, like the day before his impeachment hearing started. And call me a cynic, but it seems to me like, I mean, the American military contractor, I suspect it has more to do with the embassy stuff. But, and a military contractor, again, this was a mercenary, this was a private contractor who was killed. So it's a statement, and I can understand it, but at the same time, I saw a news article today saying, was this legal? And looking at how it was legal, well, would it be considered legal if Iran did the same thing, killed a high-ranking American political official while he was visiting Iraq at Iraq's civilian international airport by missiling their plane? It's pretty clearly not legal. I mean, sure, America's showing force, and an election's coming up, and Trump's about to get impeached, and sure, change the news cycle, makes sense. But Iran is a country of 90 million people, and granted, America's kind of justifiably had a kind of a hate boner for them since the 1979 revolution and the whole embassy hostage crisis. And I get that, and America doesn't forgive countries easily. I mean, just ask Cuba. But they've made it right with Vietnam and other countries, but they've held on to it with Iran. And a lot of people have been looking to make Iran obviously the next war, and Trump has actually resisted this. He came in campaigning on no more stupid wars, but when Bolton was about to push him into a war, they tried setting up that whole thing with the attack on the Japanese ship, which they said they could prove was Iranian, that the Japanese didn't believe as a casus belli, as a justification for war, and they couldn't get everyone on board with that. So now they're actually basically they just murdered someone in public. And they're saying, and we dare you to start a war with us, and when you do, we're going to bomb you in 52 different places. So, Quinn Rankid, what is it? It depends on the definition of I believe, is what Bill said. Look, Bill was guilty, so I think Bill was guilty of lots of things. But I think, he's an altar boy compared to the current president. I mean, look, I think Bill had terrible judgment, at least on personal life matters, and he showed that pretty clearly. But he didn't actually try to extort the president of Ukraine for political favors at any point, among the million other things. So, that's right. Depends on what is exactly. I imagine I couldn't even imagine. Oh, and Kennedy. I mean, everybody talks about how Kennedy was this saint of a president. Hell no. I mean, Clinton compared to Kennedy. I mean, Kennedy was bonking multiple Eastern agents while he was president. I mean, so all of that. Hey, Ahmed, good to see you. Happy 2020. So, But neither here nor there. Like I say, if you've seen the movie Wag the Dog, which was actually made just before Clinton went and launched the cruise missiles against northern Iraq, right before his impeachment hearings, same thing. Here, the movie Wag the Dog, inventing a war to distract the public. To me, that's what this is, and it's crazy. Not defending Iran at all, but the point is that the idea that this was preemptive. I mean, the justification being made now that this is preemptive. It's BS. This is political and it's cynical and it's clearly not legal. Clearly, no one's going to hold them accountable for it. But it's stupid. Japan should, which was just getting persuaded to become involved in doing patrols in the Persian Gulf, which clearly they should be getting out of that now. And clearly, America, Trump, he's not doing well, and he seems to me like he wants a war. He's trying to cause one. And does that make it a crappy time for Gome to be choosing Lebanon as a place to hide? Well, I don't know. The Lebanon's, even at the best of times, it hasn't really been a good place to hide since 1980. Until which time it was apparently lovely. I mean, I tell you, two countries I would love to visit in my lifetime would be Lebanon and Iraq. In fact, the Bekaa Valley, which is like one of the most notorious lawless parts of the world, has got some of the most amazing ancient sites, in terms of Roman and pre-Roman and sort of ancient sort of ruins and stuff like that. It's got tons of hashish apparently, because again you can't really get in and enforce law and order there. But Lebanon was like the Paris of the Middle East, and in Iran as well. Again, it is one of the largest and most influential countries in the world that's been isolated because of the regime that's been in control of it since 1978. But that goes back to 1953, of course, as to the whole reasons that regime came into power. All of that said, I don't see how a war between America and Iran is a good idea under any circumstances. I just don't. Granted, Iran's been misbehaving around the region, and but containment makes sense. But who wants a war with Iran? It's not America. Well, it's neocons in America, and it's Saudi Arabia. This is America doing mercenary work for Saudi Arabia. And if you ask me if there's a country that you want to be keeping an eye on, I mean, how Saudi Arabia basically, how did they get away with attacking America in 9/11? I mean, they got away with, it was Afghanistan that got punished for it. So yes, I look, if there's a conflict there, I don't know that Lebanon's going to be the worst place to be per se, because I think it's all going to be, in Iraq and Iran that's going to get the worst stuff from it. There again, of course, Ghosn faces prosecution now in Lebanon, and you can bet that the Japanese government will be encouraging Lebanon to probably follow through and prosecute him for his ties with Israel. The world is going a little bit crazy. That said, the story of his escape, I mean, I'm going to keep reading the news. It continues to be interesting. I don't see Ghosn as a hero or a figure of sympathy. I did until he escaped. But what can you do now? So we'll see what happens to him. It's going to continue to be an interesting story, I think, this year. It'll be interesting to see what happens. We've got the Olympics this year. We've got a lot of hotels going up. Tourism's going to continue to boom. We've got a lot of people coming to Japan this year. A lot of things to look forward to. Japan continues to actually be one of the only sort of sane appearing countries in the world. Every time I leave the country, I think, one, where's a washlet? Because I can't make myself clean here, and two, Japan really is the sane place. I feel that more and more when I look at the rest of the world. I'm quite happy to be here. It's still an awesome place to be. I'm still going to be here every Sunday, whenever I can, telling you guys the news and what's going on. I will sit here rambling. Might play a tune or two, although I didn't expect to talk for a full hour tonight. Although I did, even with technical issues in the beginning. So, poor Vietnam. Is Vietnam... Oh, I don't know anything about Vietnam. I don't understand that reference, Mr. Kodicha. I'm just saying that, Japan's doing fine, and I'm quite glad to be out here. But yes, Vietnam, I hear, is lovely as well, actually, and I'd love to visit there sometime. I hope that you're all well. It's been great to see. Penny Omori, he didn't try and extort the president of Ukraine. There, CNN BBC, ABC, New York Times propaganda talking points and Democrat lies. Well, as I understand, the whole impeachment trial made it pretty clear that it was his own intelligence chiefs that reported him. It wasn't the media that misreported this. That he did actually threaten and follow through with the threat to withhold aid if Ukraine didn't investigate the son of Joe Biden for his business contacts in Ukraine. So it sounds like he did, and that's not even in dispute. I mean, Trump was offered the chance to defend himself, and he didn't take it up. But in any case, it's obviously not going to get through the Senate, so it's just going to be a big show thing anyway, and he's probably not going to get impeached. So again, I don't know why he would go starting a war with Iran. But anyway, I'm sorry, I was going to say goodbye, and I was seeing the names, and I thought I saw an interesting comment, and then I got a little bit crazy, so I will stop that. But Penny Olmo, I'm very glad to have you here. I hope you have a great year. And again, I really don't care about US politics, even though I talked for it a little bit more than I should have tonight. Tech Art too, good to see you. Wag the Dog was a good movie. Everybody go watch it right now, because you'll see what I'm talking about. It's a good movie. And actually there's some famous faces in that movie who were in that movie before they were famous as well, so that was kind of cool. To YY, good to see you. Tech Art too. Ahmed, also good to see you. I see you saying things about the Lebanese, but hey, Arab people all get along and be friends with Israel too, for F's sake. I mean, seriously. Yeah, just be friends. See, problem solved. I just fixed it all for you guys. You're welcome. Mr. Cordy Champ, Tico, Sam, believe in yourself. Good to see everybody there. Make me great again. Thank you. Have a good night. Busan Kevin, good to see you. Happy 2020. And we'll see you same time, 10:40 p.m. Japan Standard Time next Sunday night. And have a good one, everybody. Good to talk. And let's keep following what's happening with this Golden drama. See you later. Boom. Peace. End stream. Happy New Year, everyone. Hey, C from Berkeley. Happy New Year to you. See you later. Remember to like if you like.